Welcome everyone. Thank you for tuning in today. Today I'm deeply honored and very privileged to have Lauren Spiro to chat about her life journey and also about healing and what it means to us and our world. To sum up Lauren, I'll just whip in this little video trailer of her published book, Living for Two, because it sums up Lauren's life story and her journey in very apt ways. So just have a watch.
Since I published the book, I've been thinking about why is it culturally relevant. The book is my story, and it dispels the myth of quote-unquote mental illness. It is very much about finding, I think, who I was born to be, and the struggle, some of what I went through to find my truth and who I am and what's real, because I was taught so many lies, particularly by the mental health system. So part of the story, the cultural currency, is the damage done by the pressure, enormous pressure, to conform to our society. When I was 14, my father was shot in the face by a teenager, 17-year-old, with a handgun. He was in a coma, never regained consciousness from a coma, and died 16 days later. And the world as I knew it ended. When I was 16, I very suddenly experienced a oneness with the universe, overflowing oneness, the capacity of the human mind to experience other levels of consciousness, of awareness, and that is very beautiful. And that got labeled chronic schizophrenia. So the message I got all my life was, what's wrong with you? What's wrong with your attitude? Snap out of it. You know, it's this pressure to be someone I'm not and to feel something I don't feel. And that's a huge, it's mental health oppression, but it's also, you know, when you combine that with the impact of sexism and racism and classism, that was my life. The book was written in my 47th year, when I just really stopped and listened and was re-examining, re-evaluating, re-feeling, remembering the impact of my father's life and death on me. Even though I was given this diagnosis of chronic schizophrenia at 16, I learned over many years that there was never anything wrong with me. Was it psychosis and schizophrenia, or was it a vision? Today I know it was a vision. So, and that happened to me. How many other people does that happen to?
So the book is a love story that I couldn't heal from my father's brutal murder and forgive his murderers without also embracing my own mental health liberation story. It's really an invitation for people to look with a deeper lens.
Hello Lauren, welcome. Thank you so much for giving me your time. I really
Patsie, thank you for inviting me. I'm honored, really.
Yeah, and I know we're on, different parts of the globe, but thanks to technology, we're able to have this intimate chat here today. Lauren, as we've seen from the video clip, you have had quite an amazing life, quite an amazing journey thus far to get to where you are today. I mean, that's an understatement, really. But and today you are a published author, a writer, and also the director of the NCMHR, which is the National Coalition for Mental Health Recovery. So, Lauren, I was wondering, would you be able to share a little bit with us briefly about your life, going way back to when you were a child, briefly what it was like for you before and then during and after the tragic incident with your dad, and then the tragic and sad loss of your dad.
Well, I grew up in the suburbs of Washington, D.C., kind of a middle-class community where I didn't need to worry about having a roof over my head and food on the table. So in that sense, physically, there were some resource and some comfort, some safety. But I grew up in what felt like to me an emotional war zone. I know that my parents loved me deeply and did the best they could, as I think we all do. But I grew up feeling like my essence or certainly my emotions, I just held a lot in to get through the day and the week. So, I mean, I was popular. I had friends. It was a wonderful place to grow up in, actually.
And your dad was a very, very close figure in your life, wasn't he?
My dad, honestly, was the person in my family that I felt some trust with, some safety and trust. We spent more time together than he spent with any of the other kids, my brother and sister. So I have very fond memories of that, and my parents, thankfully, took a lot of videos when we were very young. So when I watch those videos, he's like almost still alive. It's it's so real, and it's just so visceral. I'm thinking now of, I learned to swim before I learned to walk, and it was because we had a little plastic pool in the backyard, and it was me and Dad. Anyway, so one day, May 12th, in the middle of the afternoon, he was approached by two teenagers with a handgun in Washington, D.C., and shot in the face. And it was several hours later, it was about 6 p.m., that we were informed by two police officers coming to the house. So he was in a coma for 16 days. And that was a great time of waiting. In fact, in the book and in my life, I think of it as the coma time. 16 days is like an eternity, for a 14-year-old. It's just, in intensive care. So for me, I think of it as the first big opportunity that I took to look at the impact of racism and classism on my life, because the young man who shot him grew up in a very poor neighborhood. I actually went to that neighborhood while I was writing the book, and it's continues to be a very dangerous neighborhood. The police said I would probably be okay because I was going during the day to visit that neighborhood, and I was going with someone else. But so if you can imagine being 14 years old and trying to wrap my mind around the concept that a 15-year-old who grew up 30 minutes away from my home learned that it was okay to take a human life over, which is practically nothing, really. It wasn't clear if he was trying to sell a handgun to my father. The judge dropped the attempted robbery charges. But so it was just trying to wrap my mind around that as a 14-year-old was, it was big. It was really big.
Absolutely.
And the classism piece, that so many of the problems that we have, stem from inequalities, economic inequalities. And so that was a young age to start looking at that. So after that, so a year and a half later, oh gosh, it's amazing. I'm 58 today, and I look back at my spiritual emergency that happened when I was 16, and in some ways it feels like it's right there, because I've spent so much time looking at it, what happened and why me and the meaning and purpose. But in other ways, it feels like another lifetime in ways. Um, so I'm 16. It's a year and a half after my father's passing. Life was returning to what looked like, the new normal. I was in high school, public high school. And one evening that I do remember pretty well, it's like my soul was just really calling out for help, calling out for a deeper sense of meaning and purpose and belonging in community, because I just thought, what kind of world am I growing into? The Vietnam War was raging. My father's murdered. On the other hand, I live in a pretty safe community. I have good friends, good teachers, and some privilege growing up in a middle-class community.
Well,
So it was very interesting.
I remembered reading in your book, how you explained that you literally felt you died when your dad died as well. So, yeah, I think it would have been very difficult for a young lady that age. With that experience that you had at the age of 16, around about 18 months, 2 years after your dad passed away, so you explained it in your book. It was a real oneness sort of experience, yeah? So you were outside at the time, and it just spontaneously happened? Or was there something that led you because you did a lot of reflection? Or do you mind sharing? Yeah.
Oh, of course. No, I love to share this. I was in 10th grade. I was in high school. So, busy, right? 16, you're busy, lots going on. The body's changing, hormones raging. In many ways, life was good. And there was a buildup. There was about a 10-day buildup. I fell in love on my birthday. This was 17 days after my birthday that I was actually put in a mental institution. So my life was exciting. I was in love for the first time. I didn't know what love was. Didn't have a clue until it happened to me. Then I realized, oh, wow, this is pretty amazing. So there was an excitement that was building. I needed less sleep because life was so good. It was very exciting. And then one night, I did, over a period of 3 hours, I felt increasingly like this tornado was rolling faster, faster, faster. And I ultimately ended up feeling that God, higher power, spirit, was saying, Lauren, there's work for you to do in the world. And we are asking you to be a part of changing the world. So it blew me over at 16. It was like when God asks you to do something, it's not like I felt like I could say, no thanks, why don't you find someone else? It was like this, it's not mesmerizing. It was just like a, I don't know if it's a vortex. I haven't used this language before in talking about it, but it was just like being called, really being called to something so far above what me at 16 thought of my life. It was enticing. It was seducing. It was like, of course I'll do it. Take me there. Lead me. So I had a vision of the world. I had a vision of cleaning up the streets, of the gang violence, the drugs, the murders, a peaceful community, a peaceful world, like I had with my friends. Closeness, connection, belonging, such compassion for each other. So what, I was experiencing was labeled hallucinations, delusions, and late at night I went home. I was just walking around the community, but I went home and told my mother a little tiny piece of what was going on with me, and it was late at night, so the next morning she took me to see a psychiatrist, and he said, oh, don't stop at home, take her immediately to the hospital. So what was exciting, and it's like every cell in my body was tingling and alive. I'd never felt that before, or since with that intensity. But I felt so alive. I was feeling vibrations from animals, spirits, people, the wind, everything. Again, I had never felt that before. So it was just so overwhelming for me at 16. If it happened today, it might be a little overwhelming, but I have the resources and supports today and the knowledge, information to navigate it,
Exactly.
which I didn't have. I didn't have that back then.
Yes. Yes, I felt really sad when I read that part in your book because, I mean, I know obviously you had a background in Christianity, and so you related the experience. Now, like you said before, then you couldn't understand it. But from my point of view and probably our interpretation, I suppose, and from my level of awareness where I am now, your experience, that particular experience, it's one that is a spiritual transcendental type experience that, as you probably know now, a lot of spiritual seekers, spend years seeking for, meditators. And now, look, I can totally relate because I had a similar and yet not so similar, because each individual's experience is totally different, one to that as well. But for me, it was the point that got me to, it was the point that healed me totally. So it was the point that transformed me totally. But for you, because you didn't have that support, you didn't have that knowledgeable base around you, you were just locked away after that. It's just, devastating. It was, yeah,
It was, yes, it was devastating. And, it's today we're creating safer places for people to go to feel supported, where we can engage their minds and take people from monologue. Because I was very stuck in monologue, in my own head. And now today it's beginning to become practice, at least amongst the peer world, but also in Finland with open dialogue, to take people from monologue to dialogue, to just engage someone's mind, to believe in people, to believe that this is a potential time of great knowledge gaining and connection and finding deeper meaning, which was what it was about. My spiritual emergency really was about, looking for deeper meaning and purpose, because I felt kind of lost in this big world.
And
unsafe, I should say, too.
Yeah, especially at that age, at the time too. Yeah, it's happening so much now to so many souls, and everywhere, and from all walks of life, and interestingly enough, through those that have gone through a lot of suffering and a lot of hardship as well. Yeah, I think it's a real dismantling of our ego self, your human layers, and that's why your spirit essence just shines through. And so it's quite a privilege, that experience, but not quite so for you at the time. So then you ended up, sadly, being put in a mental institution, which to me is imprisonment, but also torture. Yeah. And how
It very much was that.
Oh,
Imprisonment.
totally. Yeah, from your book, I know.
But it was the new normal. So I didn't know that it was imprisonment and torture. I thought, and actually the most damaging aspect of it really was feeling so completely labeled as sick, that my mind was sick, that I needed to be locked up and drugged up. And that was actually the most damaging, along with the label of chronic schizophrenia, that, those people, the experts, the quote unquote experts, thought that I was diseased. And chronically. That was what was most damaging, that I tried to wrap my mind around that for decades, actually.
Totally.
It was always a little resistant. It's like, well, where's the evidence? Where's the blood scan, the bone scan, the whatever that shows any trace or any evidence of proof? And of course, it was not. It was never there.
Well, the whole area of psychiatry is very subjective, as we know. Yeah. Have you seen the film Marketing of Madness?
No, I haven't. Not yet.
Ah, well, yeah, I think you'd be very
I've
interested.
lived it though.
Ah,
I've lived it.
oh no, yes, you have.
There really are a lot of great films coming out now that are, some are really questioning psychiatry, and actually it goes much deeper than psychiatry because
Mm,
it's our society that's broken in so many
exactly,
ways. And
exactly.
we've gone so off path and off kilter.
Totally, yeah. But sadly, it's been preyed upon by certain industries that have created something quite extravagant out of it now. You know, the pharmaceutical industry, for one. Some consciously, some unconsciously, it's evolved that way. But how did you,
Yes.
so, you know, during that period of time, you would have been in such confusion because, as you've explained before, you wouldn't know who you are. People are telling
Yeah.
you you're something, and you know deep inside you that that's not, you know, from the sound of things in your book and even now when you talk about it, that you had that flicker inside you that knew who you really were. And how did your spirit, I suppose, survive through that ordeal of the time? How long were you in the mental institution for again?
15 months.
15 months, that's right. How did you survive through that time without being totally broken? Well, actually, that's the other question I have later. There was a point you
Yeah.
really got broken, yeah. So,
Yeah.
yeah, how did you hang in there through that time?
I, I put one foot in front of the other, right? That's what so many of us do.
Mm,
I felt like all of it was a test. I mean, again, God asked me to do something, and it meant risking my life to do it. And I knew that from the beginning. And I thought that the mental institute, in the beginning, I think the first few months, I thought the mental institution piece was all part of the test. I needed to survive in order to accomplish my mission, which was the mission that felt like it was coming from the universe, through me. I've never said these words before, but
Are you? That's
it's
great.
wonderful,
Yeah,
because my thinking always evolves, right? We always get, I think, more wise based on our
absolutely.
learnings and our experience. Anyway, I felt like, for me, the bottom, hitting rock bottom, was this night in the seclusion room, a 9 by 9 white barren cell with a plastic mattress on the floor, and I had a hospital gown on. That was it, and I didn't sleep all night. And it was that night that so I have voices racing, screaming through my head. I can't sleep because, everything means something. If a bird flies on the branch, it has all this meaning, and it's just an impossible amount of information to process. That's part of what I learned. The whole journey was the amazing ability of the human mind. That we use such a tiny percentage of it, and that so much more is there. I felt like, well, maybe I used 2% instead of 1% or something. I don't know, but so that particular night locked in the seclusion room at 14 and a half. I'm sorry, at 16. I gave myself permission to end my life. I didn't try anything at that point, but ironically, giving myself permission to end the suffering, the pain, the confusion, freed me up to try, because I knew there was an out, there was an escape, there was an end to the suffering. It allowed me to put all of my energy, every single ounce of every cell in my body, into trying to find a life worth living.
Mm.
So that was a turning point for me. I didn't realize it at the time, probably didn't realize it very, awakely for 20 years. But I think on some level I did realize it. Anyway, so that was a turning point. I think even though I felt like
the system was trying to kill me, suppress me, mold me into the quote unquote normal kind of conveyor belt, automatron that was my life. I always felt like there was this little flicker of life, of my life force that couldn't be killed.
I'm getting a shiver. Sorry, I was
shiver.
just sorry. Yeah, I'm getting a shiver up.
That's
myself.
it. I think I'm getting the shiver too. It's just like, the well-intended people who cause so much harm unawarely do such damage, But I had the life force that knew there must be something else than this.
Yeah, it is quite sad, the people, like you said, who are in the system, how brainwashed they are into the system as well, to not be able to even have that awareness of what they're doing. Yeah. But interestingly, with that particular experience of yours, when I write about it in your book as well, it's, to me, I had tears when I read about it. It was just so deep, and but it was more your point of absolute, because I know my journey, I came to a point like that too, and with a lot of people that I work with their healings as well, that point of absolute total surrender to, your faith, your life, and really our spirit of life can never be killed unless we let it. Hey, but yours and a lot of us sometimes has to be driven to that point of absolute surrender where we totally let go and don't battle anymore, and then we emerge into something new, don't we?
It's really amazing. It very much felt like I did surrender. I surrendered that night in the seclusion room. But it is so much about being pushed to the edge. So we take that leap of faith and begin to have an awareness of, being the caterpillar, metamorphizing into the butterfly.
Yeah, true. That's true. So now if we move on now to when you came out of the mental institution, then your life started really on another path of true healing, and you took yourself off to found people and things that resonated for you to help in your healing. Yeah. Can you share with us a little bit, Lauren, about your journey of healing and what were the key elements that helped in your healing or that you came to learn through that journey, please?
Absolutely. It's been such a winding and interesting path, but I had a couple thoughts, and one thought was not in the book because it happened more recently, and I'd love to share that. But I think there have been a few key learnings, I think, along the way, and one was being told by Janet Foner, a woman I respect very deeply, brilliant woman, told me quite a few years ago at this point, 25 years ago or so, that there was never anything wrong with me. And at the time, I thought that was a little crazy because she knew about my, the institutionalization and the drugs, and she herself had had her own experience of being in a mental institution. But it took me a few years to wrap my mind around the concept that maybe, possibly, there was never anything wrong with me. And I had tried everything else, and nothing seemed to work. I tried medication and therapy and all kinds of things, and nothing seemed to get me where I wanted to go. There always seemed to be a missing, but I was missing something. It's like other people had this thing in life, and I didn't seem to. So I was willing to try. So I actually spent years wrapping my mind around the concept that maybe, like, what are the implications? If nothing was ever wrong with me, what does that mean? What it really means is there's something wrong with our society, our social structure. So that, in a big way, got me kind of replaying the film of my life but standing at a completely different corner, a corner where at every moment, knowing that I made the best decision I could, and feeling empowered. And another key piece of that was learning to believe in myself, learning to believe that I was completely good, completely intelligent, that I could awaken, I could really have this big life that I dreamed of. Those were a couple of really key pieces. And of course, having other survivors, people who have survived the system, survived the labels, the very damaging labels. Knowing that I'm not alone was, and continues to be, really, really huge. That I can go into these places, whether they're deep emotional places or spiritual places, wherever. I have built over the years a huge support network that I am part of. And that, perhaps more than anything else, has given me such love and energy and vision. It's been huge. So I have mixed feelings about sharing my newest journey. It happened after the book. It happened in September. The book was published. The book was actually published in April 2014, but I didn't announce it until I think December, when the book trailer came out. So if you would like, I can share this newest learning, which has very much changed the course of my life.
Yes, please. I'm
And I'll
intrigued.
Thank you so much. I'll try and tell it in a condensed version. So in September of 2013, I went with two compas, companions, to an international workshop in healing from war that took place in Poland. It was 8 days together, 16 hours a day, living, working. Well, it's 24 hours a day because we slept in the same facility. It's a nice community facility in Poland, in Warsaw, and then Krakow. And so this 8-day workshop started with a 2.5-day visit to Auschwitz, which was the largest Nazi death camp. Now, I know a fair amount about my mother's side of the family, but I don't know much of anything at all about my father's side of the family. He was an only child, and my mother told me some years after he passed that she thought his family was from Hungary. So in September 2013, we were going through, ending really the second tour, 4-hour tour of Auschwitz. And as I approached this pond, beautiful pond, it was September, so the fall colors were out, it was quite beautiful. This spiritual blanket just came over me very unexpectedly and said very clearly, something happened here. Meaning, something happened and it was related to me. I had no idea how it was related to me, but I just started to cry. And my compas held me at this beautiful pond, and it was amazing. The workshop was life-changing, and I knew by the end of the 8-day workshop that I would come back the next year. I wanted to come back. It was competitive, actually. There was a wait list to get into the workshop. So this past September 2014, I went back with my two compas and back to the same workshop. Now, in the interim, the 12 months, I did a lot of emotional release work around what happened at the pond, how was it related to me, and just trying to be as open as I could to what the message was, because I didn't know. So I did a lot of grieving, as you can imagine. Part of the backstory that I'm not getting into was having some pretty clear evidence that a lot of Spiros, a lot of my father's family were murdered in the Holocaust. So this year, I asked my compas for 3 minutes. I said, I want 3 minutes at the pond to just listen to me. We took turns. but I went first, and I just did some grieving, and I said, what did I say? I said, what happened? Just being very open. And there was no lightning bolt, It was just a very beautiful, sunny day. The message really was this warm, radiating white light. Just the only word that I really heard was forward. And I interpreted that to mean go forward into the light, which is what I had been doing. So that was fine. We went through to the end of the workshop, and on the last full day of the workshop, I was in the Sharing Our Stories support group, and the support group leader, who was amazing, just love Orna. We were each sharing our stories, and I was talking about my father's story, and I said, "There's no story. I mean, I don't know much about his family and my family on that side." And I must have talked a little bit about the pond, because she said, "You found them." Mm-hmm. And I felt it first in my chest. It's like my body. What I learned on this second trip to Poland was the intelligence that's in my body, because my body was speaking to me. And this was the third time during the workshop that my body spoke to me. So it's like I felt a little pressure right in the middle of my chest. And for a few seconds before my mind knew that what she said was true, that I had found them. So I didn't know that I was looking for them, but I found them. So now what I've been working on is, what does that mean, the implications of that? That I do believe I found my family, and that's what happened in the pond. So a lot of many, ashes of people were put in that pond and in the lake next door. So I just felt a very deep connection, not only to my ancestors and all of my people, really, but just to all of humanity. I felt a tremendous, and I continue to feel so deeply connected, and that the wind at my back, and really the wind that's carrying me, is from outside me, that it's souls, it's vibrations, it's this calling of the universe that I'm listening to more deeply and letting it lead me to where I need to go. Thank you for listening.
No, thank you so much for sharing that. That's absolutely beautiful. And I was getting chills. I get indications, and I get chills up my spine a lot when I do work with people as well. And I was getting chills all the time. But just if I may just add a little bit, I think that is most profound, because you were guided there. And
absolutely.
And you were actually doing the healing for your family, because we carry all that energetic, whether you call it karmic residue, whatever, we carry that. And it has come to the stage where you were the one that had to do it for the family. Oh, that is so.
It does feel like that,
amazing.
and it is amazing, and it also feels like I'm doing it for humanity. It's
absolutely.
It's beyond my family. It's like, wow, this is the work
absolutely.
It's changing my life.
Yep. Because we are all, like you experience, like we know, we are all one. And when you move from pain, from even anger, resentment, whatever, when you move from those to the higher vibration of oneness and love, yes, you change that whole vibration for Earth. And that's why every single individual, I'm like you, like you said in your book, and that's how I keep getting that message out there all the time too. You want to heal the world, heal yourself first. Yes. Because when we do it's a ripple in the pond. It just goes out. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Oh, that is a beautiful,
Well, what you're saying resonates so much with me. It's just perfect. It's just beautiful.
Oh, you're beautiful. You're gorgeous. Yes, I'm speechless now. Where are we? Okay. Wow. Yeah, that would be, you're on another level now. So,
we are one family.
yeah, totally, totally. And you know, what's so great about all this, like people like you and, you know, so many souls that I've connected up with now too. All these things are what you don't hear in mainstream media. All the shifts, the higher vibrations, the new era that's sweeping through now. We don't hear it, and that's why I like to feature people like you, because and try and get all the word out, because
Yeah.
this is the thing, you know. It's all you hear is bad stuff, but then the good is sweeping through even faster. Yeah. Anyway, just on the point of your healing journey.
Hmm.
Now I know because in the back section of your book, you had a chapter on forgiveness. You know,
Mm.
because to come to that point, I mean, you're way past that now, but to come to that point where you had forgiven your mother for, you know, the childhood you had, because your mother had a lot of self hatred that she carried within her from her war days as well, but also to forgive the people who killed your dad as well. You know, forgiveness is something that when I work with people, I mean, it took me, it was a gradual thing for me too. It wasn't a spontaneous thing that you know, you start with letting go and then slowly work through emotions and then to gradually move as you expand your love toward forgiveness. But so yeah, would you be able to share a little bit about, you know, how that was for you, how that came about for you, that absolute freedom into that zone of forgiveness?
Yes, thank you for asking. I really do believe that we do the best we can, and we live in a very traumatized time on this planet. And it's really that simple, that if I believe that you're doing the best you can, given all of the circumstances, then it becomes easier really for me to forgive any, you know, outrageous, crazy behavior. It's like I can forgive Hitler because I know that he was doing the best he could and he meant well. His intentions were good, albeit very confused. I don't forgive the behavior, I don't forgive the actions. But I don't know any other way to find peace, inner peace and global peace, unless we can forgive one another, you know, and get past the mistakes and the confusion that are instilled on us. So I believe that we don't torture, abuse, oppress other people unless we have been oppressed. So we do what we're taught. So in that, you know, with that understanding, it makes it easier. It's not easy to forgive. Forgiveness is probably the hardest work I've ever done, but it makes it much easier to find that place of compassion for anyone, any animal, any life form.
Totally. Yeah, thank you. No, they're wise words. I just wanted the listeners to hear that too, because it's up to us to break that cycle. It's up to us to hold that big picture in mind, that big true reality of oneness in mind. Yeah, it doesn't mean what wrong's been done is right, but it does mean that we let go of it completely and with compassion, like you said. That's, yeah, beautiful. Lauren, just in line with the big picture, the message about, you know, apart from the message of the crucial need for true healing within each one of us, but also with this that you mentioned slightly before, this crucial need to get the message and awareness out there to everyone, to be a bit more awake into the kind of systems that we're subjected to, you know, like on our planet, in our lives these days, how we've evolved to the stage where systems that probably were developed in the first place for helping or serving people, and whether they consciously or unconsciously have evolved to the stage where they're now harming people. Labeling is one thing. Like I've written lots on it as well, and I speak about it a lot as well, because labeling, to me, collectively can subject people, like you said, to stigma, oppression, ignorance, mismanagement, and then individually it subjects a person to victimhood and disempowerment. So it just makes me shudder every time they come up with another new label for someone, whether it's in our health system, education system, social system. So what are your thoughts on this, Lauren? Because I know you work quite a lot in this whole area as well. Sorry to interrupt. Okay.
No, it's fine. I mean, I think you pretty much you said most of it. I mean, I think what's the purpose of labeling? I mean, sometimes it's helpful to identify the dis-ease, if in fact it is a dis-ease, but the creation of these mental illness labels in large part has been quite harming, I think, to our humanity. I know some people enjoy having the label. They feel relieved. Oh, now I know what's wrong with me. But I would invite people to look at a deeper level. I mean, and what's the purpose of a label? I mean, it's to identify, and for the mental health labels, I think it's often to control us. So I think it's important to really look with a deeper lens at, yesterday I had a teleconference dialogue of discovery, actually, and the theme that we were looking at was the relationship between emotions and the soul. And, there's some consensus. I'm doing these dialogues lately. It feels like what I'm called to do. And there's I'd say most people seem to see emotions as a pathway to the soul. So in my life, emotions have been friends. They've been allies. They give me important information about what I'm experiencing in the moment. And if I can be with them, it's very helpful. And what I'm learning more deeply is that, we are not our emotions. The emotions are transient. It's like a wind that blows through us. And we're so much more than our emotions. But the emotions do give some fuel to, kindle our minds and inspire us. And my own suffering was a motivator to find deeper meaning and to find peace. And I do believe I did find a deeper level of peace because of the deep suffering. I think it's the yin and yang. I think they go hand in hand.
Absolutely, yeah. Suffering, yeah. Unfortunately, it's painful, but it does. It's the way that grows our soul and really brings us out into a new level. Yeah. I know. So yeah. So I guess I'll wrap it up with just a little bit you shared in your book about, I think, a couple of years ago before you published your book, that you ran into, or you were you spoke to Kofi Anan at the United Nations. Yeah, he's the former Secretary General, but you spoke to him after a meeting, I think it was, yeah. And he had said to you, we are in the same line of work. We are peacemakers. I thought that was so gorgeous.
What a brilliant man.
It would have been amazing
yeah.
having to meet him and talk to him.
He has more charisma than anyone I've ever met. He just lit up this room. You could feel this emanating from his body, probably from his soul, the charisma this man has. He's been on the front line of many of the international conflicts, around the world, and such integrity, such knowledge and experience building relationships, collaborations, cooperation, when it seemed impossible, because people are at war, right? They're killing each other's children.
Yeah.
Oh my God. It was very inspiring.
That's great. Well, you are too, because you're out there at the front line. I know you do a lot of work with the I can't. I have to turn this.
National,
NCMHR.
National Coalition for Mental
Yes.
Health Recovery.
Yeah, because you do a lot of work there. You know, you've been trying to get, I think you said in your book, you've been trying to get the electroshock therapy, trying to get reforms into that for consent to be brought in.
Oh,
But you really run into a lot of strife, don't you, with your efforts, do you?
yeah, it's like climbing a mountain. It's you enjoy the vistas, but we walk on. And today, Leah Harris is doing a wonderful job with Ray Bridge and others to continue the work of the coalition. I recently stepped down
Oh, did you? Okay.
from the coalition. Yeah, 8 years I was with the coalition
Wow.
from founding it and growing it, and they continue to do wonderful work.
Okay.
And yeah.
Well, that's good because you deserve a rest. I can imagine it would be pretty full on. It's time for you to relax a bit more now. So,
Well, I really, just in closing, if I might say, my life has changed a lot since the visit to Poland, and basically, what I'm feeling these days is that the universe is calling us to dig deeper, into our essence, and embrace the light that surrounds us, which is our oneness, really, and our shared destiny. And we are evolving from Homo sapiens into Homo universalis. You and I are invited to welcome in this new era. And it's very exciting times we live in.
yes, indeed. Oh, that's beautiful. Thank you. That's such beautiful words. I was going to ask you to wrap it up, but you've done it beautifully for me. So thank you, Lauren. I just want to say, it's been such a pleasure to have your beautiful energy and for you to give me the time as well for this intimate chat. And
Thank you so much, Patsie. It's been
and thank you for all the work that you've done and you're still doing. And I, send you all my love and blessings, but also may you continue to keep shining your light, okay, into the
I
world.
will continue. You too.
I will.
Let's keep shining.
Yeah. And blind everything else. Yes. So thank you. Yeah. So I'll chat to you next time. Thank you, Lauren. Thank you, everyone, for listening in. That was a beautiful time that we just spent chatting with Lauren. And if you like to read Lauren's own words, please, you may get her book at amazon.com. There will be links down the bottom of this video. And also, Lauren also writes regularly for Mad in America. Again, all the links will be down below the video. And she has a website as well at laurenspiro.wordpress.com. So, yes, thank you for joining us today, and please take care. Blessings to you.